Hey guys, I hope that everyone is doing well today. I have been not feeling well, to be honest with everybody, for about better half of a week or so. Um, I prayed a little bit about whether I should even come back and do videos. I wasn't really feeling led to. I feel like just where I felt so bad that I haven't been in fellowship with the Lord in a few days. Honestly, finally, today was the first day that I felt like just doing anything. I've been having like just not feeling well. I don't know how else to explain it. Um, I have a lot of health problems, and I think they're finally coming to a head. Um, so if you all could pray for me, I really appreciate that. Um, Last week and a half, I guess, or so, a week or so, um, when I wasn't feeling well, me and my daughter, she would kind of just rest with me in bed when I wasn't feeling well, and we were watching. I know y'all have probably seen some of those cop shows and stuff on YouTube where they have like on the body cams, where the cops use their body cams and stuff. And we were talking, my daughter and I, about how like the law works, basically. And I used to be an officer years ago, not a police officer, but a corrections officer a long time ago, like years and years ago. Not for a very long time, but I went to school for police science and criminal justice and criminal psychology, criminology. But before that, I was an officer, and I still to this day like to watch like some of the shows, like where they bring them, to the jails and stuff, and when they apprehend them. And I'm very interested in like criminal law and things like that. But I came across a video where a couple people were like wrongfully arrested. And I mean, I felt bad for the people, and I know that was wrong, but the officers really thought they had the right person. So you gotta, weigh each thing. And thankfully, most of the people, officers that I've ever seen are very respectful. Most of them are. And any times I ever had, in the past run-ins with different, you know, officers and stuff, it was from my own doing. I got in trouble a lot for a long time when I was younger. After I was an officer, I went down a wrong path, and I was constantly, having cops called for me being disorderly, or me just, being me, doing things I shouldn't have done. And I told my daughter, I said, that's the importance of doing what you're supposed to do and obeying the law. That's what Jesus said we should do. We should live peaceable, quiet lives to avoid, scrutiny, and to avoid people saying, well, they're not who they say they are. And I have told my daughter, I don't lie about my past. She knows all the wrong choices I made. And I feel like by sharing those things with her, excuse me, that will maybe deter her as she grows older from doing and making the same mistakes I did. Now, I know she's going to make mistakes. Everybody has to learn. But that's what we were talking about. But as I was watching that show, I said, they were like, they title them like the worst wrongful arrest in history and all these things. And I said, who and what was the most horribly awful arrest that was ever made? And not saying that I'm not grateful that it was made, because it had to be done, but the manner in which it was done and how it was done, the most wrongful conviction, the most wrongful execution, the most wrongful thing in the history of the justice system as we know it. I said, what was the worst mistake of a person they arrested that didn't do anything. Who was it? And she immediately said, Jesus. And I said, that's right. I said, I used to get in trouble and it was my fault and I had nobody to blame but me. And now looking back at how foolish I was, and you watch videos like that, like I said, where police arrest people, especially when they're drinking. And I used to have a drinking problem, a really bad one. And I can think back to my actions now and how I acted when I was drinking back then. And I know why people couldn't stand me. Like I get that now. I brought all that on my own head, just my behavior and my anger issues, which I have been praying to God to help alleviate. I don't want to be angry at anybody. But I also don't want to be a coward, and I don't want to let people walk all over me. You can't do that. Even Jesus didn't do that. Yes, there were times he was silent. We read through in the book of John, chapter 18, where he was in the garden, how they arrested him, how he was silent at first. When Pontius said, who are you? Are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus said, you say that I am. That's what you're saying. Is that what you've heard about me? Did someone tell you that? Jesus was weighing him out, which it says in the verse before, that Jesus knew everything that was going to happen to him. So I argue with the folks that say he wasn't like omniscient or whatever that word is, where he knew all things. I've heard people say, well, Jesus didn't know everything. Well, he knew it then. It says he knew everything that was going to happen to him in the book of John. Read chapter 17, the very last part of 17, and then read chapter 18, John 18, 17 and 18. And it will set the stage for you to show you that Jesus did clearly know what was going to happen. It says it. He knew all that was going to happen. And to read how they smacked him and how they flogged him and how they pressed the crown of thorns into his head. And, I used to say, man, people are doing me wrong. I didn't do anything, but I did. There was times that I did do wrong things. And I felt horrible when they treated me the way they were, but I have to understand how I was behaving myself. And I told Allie, Jesus did nothing. He did nothing to deserve what was done to him. They smacked him. They spit on him. They ridiculed him. They flogged him. They pressed the crown of thorns and put the robe on him, mocked him. And he didn't fight. He didn't resist. And I was reading to her where Peter denied him and John. And I said, Allie, this is what's going to happen in the end with the mark. People say, well, Peter denied him. Yeah, but it's not that big of a deal. But it really is a big deal, because that is what's going to happen when the mark of the beast comes. They're going to say, are you a follower of Christ, or are you going to do what you have to do? They're going to implement systems where you can't get your medications, you can't get your insurance, you can't pay rent or your mortgage or whatever. You can't buy anything. Can't buy a car, can't buy a house, you can't buy groceries, you can't. Sorry, you guys, my shoulders bother me. You can't do anything. And I told her the importance of being able to say, no, I won't take the mark. Say no, and do not deny Christ. Jesus said, those who deny me, I'll deny before my Father in heaven and the angels. Jesus clearly said that. And if you don't realize that Jesus is God by now, I pray that he opens your eyes. And I've asked God to, if I do continue to make videos, to make me have a softer spirit, a sweeter spirit, because I feel for so long I've had almost like a defensive type of attitude at times. And I get really worked up. And as I wasn't feeling good this past week, I was reading, thinking back about Paul, when Paul had this thorn in his side, the pain and all the agony he was suffering with that, whether it be just, mental and physical, because it said there was a messenger of Satan sent to buffet or torment him. And he had asked God to take it away 3 times, and the Lord said no. He said, my grace, Paul, is sufficient for you. And I know that his grace is sufficient for me as well. And I want to be more of a loving person, because I read, and I think it's in Corinthians, where Paul says, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. And y'all, I really want to love people, and I want to love God. I don't want to be like argumentative and combative and like defensive and constantly arguing points. I want to be a person who lives out Christ in a way that people want to know him because of my example. And I feel like at times I've not been a good example. I feel like I've fallen very short. I just know at the end of the day that, yes, the Lord has a wrath. And if we do not repent and we do not stay on the narrow path, that we could walk away and we could be given over to a reprobate mind. I also, though, know that he won't leave you and he won't forsake you. He has stayed with me the last, I don't know how many days I've been sick. He's been there. And like I said, when you make bad choices in your past, things that I did years ago, people still, I think, look at me the way that I was. And I know it's hard, much less like Jesus talks about a prophet without honor. It's hard enough for a person in their own hometown or with their own family to prove that they're different or that they have changed. And I think a lot of people think that I am the person that I was years ago, and I'm not. Have I made mistakes? Of course, everybody does, but I have tried in the last, 2 years, year and a half, to really, really make a change. Have I had setbacks? Sure. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. But I know now more than ever that I want to serve the Lord and I want to serve others. And I pray that the Lord allows me to do that. And I know that he's trying to work on me. He's trying to do a work in me. But like I said, watching that show, those arrests and all those things, it just brought me back to my younger years in my 20s, when I was, because I'll be 40 soon, and just how I behaved. Even into my early 30s, y'all, I was still just, I was a mess. And again, I can understand why people wouldn't trust someone who has had a shady past. I understand that. But I read this psalm and it really touched my heart. And it gave me hope that maybe God can still use me. Even in my sickness, even in my weakness, that he could use me. I just, like I said, my goal now, I want to have a sweet spirit. I want to exude the type of love that Christ talks about, the type of love that he gave to us and gives to us on a daily basis, a sacrificial love, which is hard for most of us to grasp. So if y'all want to look at Psalm 107, I'm going to read from the NIV. I really like the translation here, and it's very good. It's very close to the King James. I'm going to pray. Lord, thank you for another day. Please allow this psalm just to come off the pages to those who listen today, God. I don't know. I know people are hurting. I know that people don't feel well. I know that I don't, Lord. I know people with everything that's going on, and there's just a lot going on in the world. And if we take time to look around, it's just growing worse. It's increasing by the minute, by the hour, by the days. And we know without you and without your mercy and your guidance, we won't make it. So we ask for you to be with us, to lead us, to create in us a pure, clean heart so that we could serve you and serve others, which is what you came to do and did and still do today. And we love you, Lord. Amen. Okay, guys. Psalm 107. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. I'm going to stop there for just a moment. That is exactly what keeps giving me encouragement to keep going. It's Psalm 107:2. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe. I have been redeemed from the hand of the foe. I was in the hands of the enemy for many, many years. Even when I thought I wasn't, I was. I barely escaped the clutches of this world. And like I said, I still have had setbacks even in the past couple of years. I've made mistakes. But I know that it's not right, and I hate my sin, and I don't want to continue on in a pattern of sin. And that's why God told me, there will be a point where mercy is cut off. And Second Peter talks about that. And I just want everyone to come to the knowledge of the truth. I want everyone to know that Jesus Christ is the only way to be saved. There is no other way. And just like he told Paul, it's hard to kick against the pricks. If you keep going the opposite way of God, it's always going to lead you down a wrong path. If you're trying to kick against what God has for you, if you're trying to go against him and live in the world, it won't work out, I promise. But he says here, let the redeemed tell their story. And that's what I want to do. I want to tell things, that honor God, that show that God has his hand on all those who fear him. I'll give you a little testimony from just a few moments ago. We left to go to Walmart. Allie had some Christmas money. My mom gave her for the holiday. We don't really celebrate it, so I guess that's why she kind of gave it to us early. They celebrate. And I mean, we'll go hang out with them and spend time with family. But like I said, Allie and I we celebrate the Lord all the time. So I guess that's why we don't really consider it a holiday. But she gave Allie some Christmas money, and she wanted to get a Roblox card, or like a Apple card, where you can play games online. She and I do like little role play games. We act like we have we're two friends and we just do different things. So we went to the Family Dollar because we thought they had the little cards that we could buy. And we were coming down the mountain from where I live. And actually where I used to work, there is a road that turns, and a car came out of this road. There was a stop sign. The person did not stop. They came straight out onto the main road. And thank God, I was alert and paying attention and didn't look at her or anything. And the Lord allowed me. There was a car coming up this way. There was a car turning down that same road. And I had to go like between all this, the car that was coming up, the car that didn't stop and came out. And I went like right through them. It was like a little wiggle. And God just put me right back where I needed to be. I know the Lord did it. I told Allie, I said, I'm a decent driver, but I am not that good that I could have like the reaction time thing. It was so perfect. Like God timed it so perfect. And I was going to turn around to make sure that person was okay, but there was a lot of traffic in front and behind me. And I couldn't turn because I thought, where were they going? See, they came straight and there's no road. There's just an embankment here. So it's a wonder if she didn't know where she was going, that she didn't hit like there's like I think rocks and like going up the mountain on the side. So she would have went straight. When you turn on that road, you either go right or left. So where this person was going, I don't know if they even knew. And I worried that maybe they were, I don't know, under the influence of something. Or maybe they just were tired and didn't know where they were. I'm not sure. I pulled over and waited for a moment to see if I could check on them, but we couldn't determine which car it was because my daughter was in the passenger seat, and bless her heart, I think it scared her to death. And I said, "Oh, thank you, Lord, that there wasn't an accident." And I believe with all my heart that God actually did that. I'm so sorry. I think my mom just called my daughter. I heard a phone ring. That nothing more happened, and I just knew that. I told Allie, I said, God is always watching. He's always there for us. He knows, just like he knew, when Pontius was questioning him, when the priest and all the leaders and everybody brought him um, before the governor, before Pilate. It said that he knew everything that was going to happen to him. He knew it all. And I told Allie, my daughter, I said, do you see how God has his hands in even the littlest thing? That he knew that car was going to not stop at that stop sign. He knew that I was coming right down where they were, and he had me it was perfect. Nobody got hurt. And I thank God for that. Like I said, I was going to check on that other person because I know they had to have been either asleep or um, something. I don't know. I pray they're okay. I don't think they hit anything. They just kind of stopped in the middle of the road. And like I said, by the time we got stopped to turn around, they were gone. So I just thank the Lord for that. But back to that psalm, when it says in Psalm 107:2, let the redeemed tell their story. And that's when I said, Lord, I don't know if you still want me to make videos, but I want to help encourage people because I feel like I said I went down the knowledge route. But Paul, just what he says clearly in 1 Corinthians, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. And I want to build up others and let people know that sometimes in our weaknesses, God is the strongest in us because he said he works through weaknesses. That's what he told Paul when Paul said, Lord, take this from me. He asked him 3 times to take that thorn from his side. And the Lord said, no, Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. He allowed it to keep Paul down. And I think that's why he allows me to be sick. I've had a prideful attitude in the past, and I don't want to ever go back to that. I want to, like, is it Psalm 51 that says, have a clean, a pure heart? As David said, create in me a clean heart, Lord. I don't want to be that way ever again. And I really think that building others up is the way that we all should go. In Psalm 107:3, starting back at verse 3, he says, those he gathered from the lands, from east and west, from north and south, God gathers all from all 4 winds, the 4 corners of the earth, those who were once in the hands of the enemy. It said some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. I can't tell you all how many times in the past, 5 or 6 years that I thought that my life was literally ending. I've been so sick so many times and just so distraught, so worn out from so many different things that I thought that my life was over. This past week, as sick as I got several days, I told my daughter several times, I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I just don't feel good. And after a while, I understand that Paul, when he was writing that, I'm sure he was very frustrated and tired. And, the only thing that you can do is cry out to God. And it goes on in verse 6, Psalm 107:6, and it literally says, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. Guys, it is simple. It is plain as day. If you cry out to Jesus, he will help you. He will not turn you away. Every time I've been in trouble, he's shown up. Every time. Even when I was doing stuff on purpose, purposefully, willfully sinning, he still had mercy and grace upon me. I know now that, like I said, his hand has been in everything. It says he led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. For he satisfies the thirsty and he fills the hungry with good things. Some sat in darkness, in utter darkness, prisoners suffering in iron chains. You all, I suffered in bondage for so many years. Addictions and, I mean, just name it. I tried it. I did it. There comes a point in time where you have to understand that there's a choice. You have to make a choice. You cannot continue on the way you are and serve the Lord. And that's what it finally, like I said, a couple of years ago, God confronted me head on and said, you're doing better, but you're still trying to go back. I was like the dog that returns to its vomit, I kept going back, and you can't do that. You have to stay on the straight and narrow way, and it is hard. Does that mean you won't make mistakes? No. Does that mean you won't have setbacks? No. There may be many, but please, I urge you, get up, cry out to him, keep going forward. It says, because they rebelled against God's commands. I was rebellious. For years, I was rebellious and despised the plans of the Most High. So he subjected them to bitter labor. They stumbled, and there was no one to help. I used to get upset when I had no one to call. I had offended family members. I had offended any friend that I had, and I had no one. But God isolated me and let all that happen to me and let me fall down on my face in the mud, because he wanted to get me totally away from all the world, all people in the world, and say, you only have one hope, and that hope is me. You can't look to a man. You can't look to a friend. You can't look to a parent. You can't look to your child. The only person you can ask for help that can help you is me. And I learned that, unfortunately, the hard way, because I didn't know that God would even want anything to do with me after what I had done in my past. Like I said, people in the world will remind you, well, didn't you like 10 years ago or so, didn't you do this? And yeah, I did. Well, didn't you a couple years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, do this? Yeah, I did. And I don't know if people are taken aback. My daughter's always like, I think people don't know how to take you, Mom, because you just say, yeah, I did that. Sometimes I'll just say, this is what I did. Just because I want people to know that there is a worse problem that we have today in this world than just the sin itself. It's people who think that they're a good person. People who think, well, I don't really do a whole lot. I don't drink a lot. I don't curse. I don't lie. I don't steal. I'm not in a sexual, illicitly, like a wrong, an immoral sexual relationship. I try to pray occasionally, whatever. They think because they are what the world looks like, moral, morality, that they're okay. And I have a lot of people that I know that are like that. They'll say, well, I don't really do these things, so I think I'm pretty good. And that's not going to work. I tried to do that for a while too, and I thought that the morality thing would work out for me, but it doesn't. It's only those who are sold completely out to Christ who are going to make it through these times that we're in. Only those. He goes on to say, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. This is Psalm 107:13, and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and broke away their chains. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. For he breaks down gates of bronze and he cuts through bars of iron. Some became fools through their rebellious ways. I most certainly did. I was so foolish, you all. I can't even, I mean, I could give examples all day long, but I was so selfish and so foolish and so just childish and immature. Um, I told my daughter, I tell her these things, you guys, so that she can look at me as a what not to do scenario. I said, okay, I did this, but what should I have done? And we talk about it because I don't want her to follow down the same pathways that I did as a young adult. I was very spoiled growing up, y'all. I had a lot of financial security, and anytime I would do something wrong, they wouldn't, I mean, they would discipline me, but they spoiled me very badly as far as like material, I guess, materialistically speaking. Um, and as I think it's in Proverbs where Solomon said, a horse is a vain hope for deliverance. I put my hope in money and status. Um, that was just, you know, I thought that was okay. And I became foolish. And it goes on and says, and suffered affliction because of their iniquities. I suffered many, many things. And, after a while, you have to start taking responsibility for yourself. You can't blame it on other people. I listened to a sermon last night. I hadn't listened to a sermon in a long time. And I really don't listen to a lot of pastors anymore. I just read and ask, the Lord to help me the best that I can. Because I hear so many pastors preaching so many incorrect things, and I just don't want to get involved in it. I think it was Pastor David Wilkerson that he passed away years ago. He was Times Square church pastor in New York. I admired a lot of things he did. There was a couple of things I've heard him preach about that I was questionable. But I mean, he really preached against sin. He really did. And he has those teen centers. I really admired that, like the drug rehab centers. I think they still have them all across America. They're called Teen Challenge. At one time, I really would love to have worked there because not only do I, know what it's like to have addictions and stuff, but I really admired what they were doing. Um, so yeah, I listened to a sermon and he was talking about, I think it was called Satisfied Sinners. It's the most newest one. If y'all want to check that out, it's on Ahava Jerusalem, their channel. But he was talking about being satisfied in your sin. And he told a story about a young man. He said he was in Harlem and they were working with some addicts on the street. And they were walking down an alley and he saw this young woman. He said she probably wasn't 18, 19. She had a baby stroller. And she was pushing her baby down the street. And she approached him and said, "Aren't you that preacher man? Up in Times Square?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "You work with the drug addicts, right?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." And she said, "You've got to find my boyfriend, my fiance. His name is Hector." And he said, she said, "You need to work with him, please, Pastor, help him." And he was like, "Well, I don't typically go looking for people he wasn't the type of person to force people to go to a rehab." He said, "I wanted them to become desperate and want our help, and then we'll help them." But I think, however it worked out, Pastor Dave and some of the other men that were with him saw this woman's boyfriend that was named Hector. And they asked him, "Do you want help?" And he did. He agreed. So they brought him back to, I forget what they called the house at the time. I know they had one called Sarah House for the women. I don't remember what they called it for the male side. But he brought him in. He said he stayed with us for about 6 or 7 months. He said he cleaned himself up. They helped him, get over the withdrawals from all the drugs that he was on, and he was doing so well. And he said, "I had such high hopes for this young man." He said he looked like a different person. You could see the love of God in his eyes. He was very just ready to change, right? He was just a totally different person. So after 6 or 7 months, the program ends. He said we sent him out with some resources to help, like I think, get a job. Said he had his Bible under his arm. And he said, I had such high hopes. And I told him we'd check in a few days to see how everything's going once he's back in, his house with his little girl and his soon to be wife. And he said, I just had such high hopes. Well, he goes home. A few days later, he's not heard from him. The pastor hadn't heard from Hector. So he said, I waited. He was supposed to meet me a few days later. No show. So he says, I go back to the house. And I think how he told it was like this. He sees Hector like in an alley back on the needle. He's shooting. And he said, my heart sank. And I thought, how, Lord? He said, I was like, how did he fall back? I had such high hopes for this young man. And he said, Hector, what happened? And he said, my old lady. And he said, what do you mean? He said, your fiance? He said, she was the one originally that wanted help for you. And she, apparently, Hector said, when I came back this way as a man of God, she didn't want me. She wanted me to be the way that I was. She wanted the old man. She didn't want the new man. She said, you are acting ridiculous, because she wanted to smoke and drink. And he said, don't do that around me. She said, you're being ridiculous. I want the old Hector back. And so she encouraged him to go buy some heroin and to get high, because she wanted the old man. And Pastor Dave said, I sat in just disbelief. But I realized that some people are satisfied with their sin. And when you begin to make excuses, and when you begin to just become complacent, you are satisfied with your sin. And that is a position, friends, that you don't want to be in. I was in that for years, and that's what this psalm is talking about. You're in chains. You're in utter darkness, and you're just becoming satisfied with it. He told a story about a young boy in Harlem years ago, in this, I think it was the 60s or 70s. They found him in an abandoned, like a warehouse type thing. And the person that owned it had been letting him rent a room and clean up at this place. I don't know what they used it for. In the basement, there was a furnace so that he could at least stay warm. He said he slept on a slab on the floor, like on a little piece of cardboard, had maybe one outfit to wear, had very limited food and water. But that's how that young man had lived from the age of about 12, because his parents died and he didn't want to go into the welfare system, into the county or the government there, because he knew they were going to put him in foster care and maybe institutions, and he didn't want to go. So he ran, and that's where he had stayed from the age of, I think, 12 or 13 to the age of 17. And when Pastor Dave and them found him in that basement of that abandoned building, I think he was 17. And he was on drugs, really bad. And he had become accustomed to shooting. I think it was heroin. And when they found him, he was withdrawing, and he didn't have any way to support the habit anymore. He'd lost what little bit of, financial security he had, and he couldn't buy anymore. He couldn't buy any more hits, And he said, I need help. So he was crying out to them for help. So he said, we can help you. We will get you a place to stay. He said that night, we took him to the rehab place. We got him cleaned up. We got him dressed in very brand new pajamas, like flannel pajamas, so he would be warm. Got him a nice clean room, a bed with brand new linens. He said we decked it out. We cooked him a great meal. He sat down. Everything was wonderful. He said I had such high hopes for this young man, and I knew that this young man was going to come out different. I just had such high hopes for him, he said. He said about 3:00 in the morning, he went back to his office, because I think he had an office in the little facility where they housed the folks that were detoxing and that were trying to change, And he heard a blood-curdling scream at 3:00 in the morning. 3:00 in the morning, he runs out of his office. He's like, what's going on? I think one of the people that work there, one of the, I don't know what you call them. They're like resident people that walk the halls to check on all the people that are in the, I don't know what they call it, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm like a lack of words. Anyway, they checked, and it was this young man. I can't remember what his name was, but he had left the room. He'd grabbed what little clothes he had on his back. He fought them, and he left, and he told them, "Don't touch me. Don't help me." And he ran out into the night. And he said, "We couldn't find him all night. We looked, couldn't find him." He said a few days later, he was walking down the street, and he looked down an alley, and there he was next to a dumpster. And he said he was out of his mind, just so high. And he said, "Why did you run?" He said, "I was trying to help you." He said, "Listen here, preacher man, I don't want your help." He said, "But you asked me for help." He said, "Yeah, because I was, in a bad spot. I was withdrawn. I was under duress. I thought I wanted your help. But you know what you've done to me?" He said, "You've taken away the only security that I have." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I was trying to help you. I was trying to help you get security from God, from the Lord, to change you so that you can no longer be a slave to your sin." And he said, "I don't want that, Pastor." He said, "I have known this way of life since I was 12, and I'm not about to change now." He said, "What I have left, let me keep it." He said, "I thought he was talking about he had like a calendar with him when he came that he wanted to put on the wall that had belonged to his mother before she passed, and maybe like a notebook." He said, "I'll go get those things. We tried to give them to you, but you ran." He said, "I'm not talking about that." He said, "I'm talking about you were trying to take away from me my way of life, the way of life as I know it, and I am happy like this. This is what I want." And he said, "I walked away defeated that day." And he said those two incidents occurred very close to one another. And he said, to this day, I think about, this was right before he passed away, the pastor Wilkerson. He said, "I think about those two young men. And one of them, the first one that I told you guys about, I think his name was Manny. No, Hector. And then Manny. One of them passed away 6 months later from cirrhosis. And he was only like 18, I think, 19 years old. And that's what being satisfied in your sin will do. You can be satisfied in so many different addictions. You can be satisfied in shopping addictions. You can be satisfied with sexual, immoralities. There are people who are into so many different things now today in this world that are so messed up. You can be into drugs, alcohol, shopping, gambling, pride, power, authority. People get on power trips. There are so many things in this world that can distract you. And there are so many people who think that they are right with God and that they know the Lord, but they are actually satisfied sinners. In Psalm 107, as it goes on, verse 20, he says, "He sent out his word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave." And y'all, I'm going to tell you something. I can't tell you how many times I've almost died. Like, I don't think anybody would believe me if I told them. I have been in like 2 or 3 almost fatal car accidents. I was med-flighted twice. The last one, I was unconscious. I don't even remember part of what happened. The doctor told me later on that I had like an 8% chance to live. And he was amazed at how I was alive. I had a hematoma from that wreck on my back that was this big. It was like a basketball on my back. I still have, horrible scars and knots from it today. They took out 9 to 9.5 liters of old dried blood and like tissue. And the surgeon said, if you had bled out on the scene of the accident where you hit so hard and if that blood had burst out, you would have died from blood loss. You were right at the mark where you can die, like the 10-liter blood loss mark. How, other than God, can you explain that? There's no explanation. The other wreck, I hit someone from the back. I wasn't drunk or anything. I was in distress, had a fight with a family member. I was behaving erratically. I was in a very bad place at that time. I hit so hard I didn't even see the people in front of me. I was crying. I was upset. I hit them. Um, they had to med flight me. I passed out at the scene. They med flighted me. It was horrible. Um, like I said, how do you explain those things? I'm trying to think of other times. There's been many times they thought I was going to have heart attacks. I was on heart monitors. I had to do stress tests. They held me in the hospital and said I'd had some type of event with my heart. I have a cousin who passed away years ago from several heart transplants. I've got an uncle who had massive heart attacks in his 40s, who's got a pacemaker and defibrillator. So I've got a history of people in my family with heart disease. I take so many different pressure medicines. Um, I had 2 brain tumors that were removed in June of 2020. I was starting to like hallucinate and see things, and they didn't know what was causing this. And they found 2 tumors in my pituitary, um, and near the hypothalamus as well. I think it was pressing right all through there. And they were able to laser most and take it out of my nasal. And let me tell you something, it's a transphenoidal, I forget what you call it, but it was horrible, y'all. Um, that recovery from the surgery has left me just, I never want to have surgery again, and I need to have like another surgery. Um, they wanted to do a hysterectomy on me years ago, and I didn't let them. So, I can speak for myself that I have been in so many near death things. When I used to take meds, like I abused them severely badly years ago in my 20s. I mean, took enough to probably kill someone. You know, I can't sit and lie. Um, and drinking. Oh gosh, I don't know how many times you all, when I was in my early 20s, that I would wake up and I had vomited. I know I was at lethal levels of alcohol. I mean, there's no way that I survived it other than God. Um, I could go on and on. I've been in a mental hospital over that whole issue with, I was hearing things. I do believe that during that time, God allowed me to see spiritual things, and I was trying to explain that to people, and people took that as me being insane. But I can assure you, I was not. I knew what was going on, and it was terrifying. I could see people in a way I can't explain to you. It was like I could see their intentions. I could see their inner man. It was weird. It was like spiritual things I was seeing. I stayed in that mental ward for 3 weeks. They told me that the most or the longest a person had ever been in there was 7 days. I think maybe there was somebody 14 days, she said. And I was there for like 20 some days. They didn't know what to do with me. And I didn't think I was going to get out. I thought that this was the end of my life, that God was done with me. And he had mercy and got me out. And, I have a daughter, you guys, and I wasn't a very good mom for the first several years of her life. I wasn't. I mean, I was there. I played with her. I was very active with her, but I set a bad example. I took a lot of nerve meds after that whole incident. I would take them and I would pass out because they were so sedating. I couldn't hold my head up. They wanted me on all these antidepressants, all these nerve medications. And I cold turkey quit them in the end of 2019. I quit every one of them cold turkey. Praise God. And do I need nerve medicine? I probably do. I'm a very nervous person. I think I've had Tourette's for years. I have like a lot of twitching and things that I do. My daughter notices it a lot. When I don't feel well or I get nervous, I'll twitch, and that's what we assume that it is. I think it's just nerves. It's just nervousness. I get a lot of anxiety, and I know I'm supposed to cast that on the Lord. But I'm telling you, if you all could have saw me years ago, you wouldn't know who I am today. And I think it's a shock to some of my family members, even because they know how I was for the better half of 30, let's say 36 years. So they're remembering, a long time. And now the past 3 years, I'm a totally different person, and people can't accept it. They don't know how to take me. They don't know. I think some people think it's a show. And that sucks, because that's what I told my daughter. I said, but I see their side. I see how I told her, when you make mistakes, when you make conscious decisions to do things that are going to affect your entire life, people are watching. That's why Peter and Paul and all of them said, you have to be the example. And if you're not setting an example, then you need to get out of the way. And I told God, I said, I just feel, Lord, like defeated sometimes because I don't think people take me seriously, especially when he talks about a prophet without honor. And I'm not a prophet. That's not what I'm saying. But just an example, like how Jesus, when he went to his own people, his own family even thought he was crazy, guys. I think is it in John or Luke, where he talks about his family came and they thought he was insane. I've been told that. I've been told that by family members that I was like, I think they said paranoid, or that I was too much. I guess they think with God I'm too much. I'm not too much. I'm not enough. And Allie, could you bring me my charger, sweetheart? Thank you, babe. When I read that psalm and about how he's brought me out of the darkness, out of the bondage, out of the chains. And do I still struggle with things? I do, y'all. I have so many pain issues, and I was on medication for that for the better half of 15 years, from the time I was like 20 to 35. And I don't take those anymore. I have a medicine that I take that helps like maintain me, but I don't take narcotics. I can't take pain medications because I didn't take them right for so many years, and I was honest with the doctor about that. Hold on one second, you guys. Oh my goodness. Thank you, sweetheart. I'm almost done, my love. I've got to go fix taco salad in a minute. But yeah, I was honest with my doctor years ago. And it's hard, especially like I said, with when I had those brain surgeries, they had to pain manage me, and it's so sad because it's like you destroy your reputation when you tell the truth. But I would rather do that because they were very hesitant to pain manage me after a brain surgery, because I had admitted that I had abused meds years prior. And so when they were like, we're going to do a hysterectomy, I said nope, because they didn't even want to pain manage me during a brain surgery. So, and they did very briefly, but then they didn't want to like help me further from that. And I understand, I get it, but we have to come to a point where we forgive people. People say they forgive and they're like, yeah, I know. But I love the saying, what is it? I'll forgive, but I won't forget. Well, that's kind of how it is. People want to forgive you, but they don't want to forget what you've done. And that's what I told my daughter. I said, when you do everything you're supposed to do, when you try to serve the Lord and you try to do what he wants you to do, when you try to live in obedience, things are so much easier. That's what the Lord told Paul. It's hard to kick against the pricks. It's hard to go the wrong way. It's like you're constantly fighting. You're constantly running like Jonah. I've been Jonah many times. Now, I don't think that I have a calling like Jonah did. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I know there's things that God is wanting me to do, and I would procrastinate or make an excuse or go back to old ways. Like I said, like in Proverbs, a dog that returns to its vomit. That was me for years. And I understand, like I said, where people are coming from when they feel a certain way towards me. But again, I told my daughter, if you're doing everything that's right, if you're trying your hardest, even if you make a mistake is different than a willful, intentional, thing. But being satisfied, like that pastor was talking about, being satisfied in your sin and not wanting a change, wanting to be the way you are, I see a lot of people that I know that are in situations that are really bad. And I have brought to their attention, just like when I was in a bad situation, they brought to my attention what I was doing wrong, and I agreed. I said, "You're right. I gotta change." Um, I brought to this person's attention, "You're in a very bad place. This is what's going on. This is the fact of the matter." And the person agreed, but they didn't want to do anything about it. And I feel for that person. I'm not going to say who it is. It's just someone I know very well. Um, they didn't want to change. They're comfortable. And I was comfortable in my sin, like I said, for 30 some years. So I do relate and I understand. But I just want to tell everybody today that if you can cry out, just like this psalm says, to God, if you can ask Him to be with you, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to be easy, because, like I said, the past week where I've been sick, I laid in the bed for days. I mean, I got up to cook for my daughter and, help her with work and things like that. But we mainly like just laid around. I just felt like I was dead. I just didn't want to do anything. Didn't feel like it. But God didn't leave me. I felt guilty because I wasn't coming on and doing studies. I felt guilty because I wasn't like reading every day. And I usually every morning when I wake up, we have Bible study immediately, even before we eat or anything. I start a Bible study with my daughter. So this psalm is very long. I was going to go on. I'm going to read a few more verses and then I'm going to have to go, guys. I've got to go fix supper. It's late. It's like 8:20 my time. It says, "Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love." I read that. "Let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of His works with songs of joy. Some went out on the sea in ships. They were merchants on the mighty waters. They saw the works of the Lord, His wonderful deeds in the deep. For He spoke and stirred up a tempest that lifted high the waves. They mounted up to the heavens and went down to the depths. In their peril, their courage melted away. They reeled and staggered like drunkards. They were at their wits' end." Guys, if I could tell you how many times I've said that I was at wits' end in the past, I'd say this is it. I'm at my wits' end. I'm done. It's over. But He didn't let that happen. I was just reading in 2 Peter, I think, the last chapter, where he talks about with God, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day. And that God is not slow, as we may understand slowness, to keep His promises, but He is patient in hopes that none would perish. I don't want to perish, y'all. I know you guys don't want to either. Please, no matter what you go through, I don't care if somebody says you've made too many mistakes. I don't care if somebody says you can't come back to God. You've been a prodigal for too long. Don't listen to them. Do not. If I could tell you every time somebody said you're not a Christian, you aren't anything, you're a liar, you're a fake, you're a fraud, look what you've done. Just humble yourself and say, yes, I did, but I want to know the Lord. I love the Lord, and I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to quit. I promise you that God will honor you if you do so. Over the years, I look at my temper. I had an anger problem for a long time. And that anger will not solve anything. And when something bad would happen, I would immediately argue. I mean, even in the past year, there's been a few arguments that I've had with family members. I can't lie. No, granted, they weren't like they were in the past. Because in the past, I mean, I'm talking about they were very bad arguments. These are just, back and forth, verbal. It's still wrong. It was wrong. And when I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. And I've encountered, though, many people over the years that have a problem admitting to like their guilt. They won't say, I've done this and I'm sorry. I think the Lord appreciates someone like that with a contrite heart, a broken heart, a contrite spirit, somebody who knows they're wrong, but who wants to change, who literally wants to know the Lord better and who wants to serve others. That's what God's looking for. He's not looking for somebody who's perfect. He's the only one that's perfect. You're not going to get there, so don't even try. Just follow him. Like he said, take your cross up and follow me. If you fall down, get back up. Get back in line. Keep running. Like Paul said, finish the race. Don't give up. Endure to the end. Goes on and says, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. This is Psalm 107, verse 28. And he brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. This is, I don't know if y'all know this. This is a prophecy about what happened when the disciples were in the boat on the Sea of Galilee and he calmed the wind and the waves. And they were like, who is this? That even the wind and the waves obey him. You guys, when the Lord said, be still, when he told that storm to calm, even the wind listens to him. We are so defiant, y'all. Animals listen to him. God can make us if he wanted to. He doesn't want to force you. He wants you to want to. He wants you to just give it all to him. He doesn't want a robot in servitude. He could have made millions of people who have no free will if he wanted to. But he gave you the free will to make the conscious decision to serve him, to be pulled out of those chains, the bondage, whatever it is you're in. It's not too bad for God. I can assure you, listen to me. I have done so many bad things in 39 years of life that I should not be here. I shouldn't even be breathing. But I'm here. And you're here for a reason. God has a plan. Jesus has a plan. He knows you. He knows everything about you. Says he formed you in the womb. He knows you. I've tried to put out my testimony on the termination of pregnancy video. I'm going to say it like that. Every time I say the A word, they block it. It won't even pull up. I gave a 2-hour testimony on that. Every time I've tried to post it, it'll like just circle like round and round. And at the bottom, it'll come up with the medical guide for the A word. So I'm going to say the termination thing. And that way, I did that twice. I'm ashamed of that. I lived in shame over that decision for so many years. After I terminated those 2 pregnancies, I lived in total mental anguish. I did not want to live for a long time. I did not have any understanding that that was murder. I didn't understand that, you guys. I thought it was okay. I was very young. I was influenced by others who thought it to be a better idea. I was in college. I just got out of modeling. I was a cheerleading coach, a dance choreographer coach. I did all these things, and everybody was saying, you're going to lose everything if you have a child right now. I believed it. I believed it. And I didn't do it once, but twice. And a second time, nobody influenced me. I did it. And I can't blame anybody anyway. I was 18, 19 when I did it the first time. I was an adult. I knew better. I should have, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. At first, I did not understand what I had done. I was very immature, and I didn't grasp. I would hear people say that's a woman's right to choose, right? And that's what this culture does. They say, that's your body, sis. Do what you want to do with it. It's all your decision. No, it's not. It is, but it shouldn't be. You shouldn't be wanting to do that, guys. And I'm not putting anybody down who's done that. I did it twice. And I only have a beautiful, healthy child today by the mercy of God. Jesus has been so good to me. Guys, he's good to all of us. Reach out to him. Call out to it like him, like to the Father that he is, to the Savior. He is your Savior. He died for you and me. And he doesn't want to see you perish. And there is nothing. I've heard people say that's unforgivable. I heard that Caviezel guy. I think that's how you say his name. The guy that played Jesus in The Passion. I used to love that guy. I don't anymore. I don't like what he talks about. I heard him in a very short clip on YouTube Shorts say something to the effect that that's just an unthinkable sin and that it's almost unforgivable. No, Jesus said there's only one sin that's unforgivable, and that's blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. I'm not saying that that man hasn't done movies that have brought awareness to things like sex trafficking, and I don't even know if I can say that. I'll probably get a strike for that. I shouldn't have said that. And the A word, determination. I mean, he brings awareness and light to that, and that's great. But I feel like people look too much at him, especially after he played in that movie. I would see him do interviews. Sorry, I pulled the computer. I would see him do interviews where people almost idolized him. And that's why the Lord said, don't make for yourself an image, whether it be in heaven or on earth, of anything or anyone. I see pictures, even I know people that I've been to their house and they have pictures of the Lord on the wall. I don't even like that. I think it's not good because you're looking at a picture and most of them make him look like a white European man with very long hair. And we all know that Jesus would not have had long hair if we read Paul. He said it was a disgrace at that time for men to have long hair unless they had taken a vow. Like, who was that? Did Samson? And then Absalom and some of them, they had took the Nazarite, whatever the vow, where they don't cut their hair. That was Samson, duh. But yeah, I just don't understand how people can constantly, it's like the world wants to constantly remind you of what you've done and say you can't get out of it. But this psalm to me says different. It says these people that he's talking about were in utter darkness. They were in bondage, chained up to their sin in the hand of the foe. They were in the enemy's clutches. The devil thought he had them. They're like, they're on my side. God said, no, they're not. They're with me. I'm taking them out. God chose you. If you come across this video, I'm telling you that if you cry out to the Lord like this psalm right here says and say, have mercy on me, oh God, and you believe who Jesus is and you know he's Lord and you know he died for you, that he was a perfect sinless sacrifice for you and me, that he said, I extend this free gift to you. Anytime you want it, it's here. Take it. It doesn't cost you a thing. It's free. All you have to do is believe on him and follow him. That doesn't mean you believe and live like the world. Can't do that. And people say, well, why do I have to obey? Because if you are constantly in disobedience to Christ and in the new world, new heaven and earth, you come in, you're going to ruin it. He's not going to let you continue to sin and come in and ruin it for those who want to walk in his ways. He can't just wink at sin. I used to think that, guys, I used to think that you could just do whatever you wanted and ask for forgiveness and it was fine. I'm blessed to have seen the great mercy that God exudes. He has, I can't tell you how much mercy God has had on me. After the 2 terminations, after the addictions, after, like I said, the car accidents, the just being a horrible person in general, the pride, the I lied a lot, arrogance, foolishness. Just, I can't even tell you like all the horrible things I've done. We'd be here all year. But he is still there and he still hears you. He goes on and says they cried out. He brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper. That's, on the Sea of Galilee too. They were glad when it grew calm, and he guided them to their desired haven. He brought them to a place, a safe haven. He'll bring you to a place where you are safe with him. There may be, what is that? Is it in Psalm or is it in Proverbs where he says 5,000 or 1,000 may fall at your left hand, 10,000 at your right, but you'll stand. He will not let anything touch you. Just like the children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they went into the fiery furnace, not a hair was singed on their head, you guys. While the children of Israel stood outside of Egypt and saw the plagues, no one in that camp was hurt. Not one. Not one of those plagues touched one of those children of Israel. Not one. It says, let them give thanks. We should thank the Lord, you guys, all the time, every single day, multiple times a day. Thank him for his unfailing love. Like I said, when we went to go get something to eat earlier, a person ran a stop sign. We were on the main road, 45 miles an hour. And a person doesn't stop on a secondary road. They were coming out in a whole line of traffic. We were just, going down the hill. Here they came like this. And it was like so close. And God had me veer around them like this. And there was a car coming up this way. And I about had hit that car on this side because I had to go around that line to get around them. And I don't know where they were going. There was nowhere to go. They were going straight into like a bank. And I said, oh my goodness, my daughter about, passed out. And I said, thank you, Lord. Like how he executed that perfectly, just perfectly. It says in his wonderful deeds for mankind, let them exalt him in the assembly of the people and praise him in the council of the elders. So that's what I'm doing. I'm praising him. I'm giving him praise, you guys. I could sit all day and tell you like the things he's done for me. I never thought I would be alive today, sitting here in a better place than what I was for years. I thought there would never be a hope. And am I where I want to be? As Paul said, no, I'm not arrived yet, as he said, but I want to. I want to keep going. Don't give up. Please, y'all, don't be afraid. He told Joshua, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Will you have fear occasionally? Absolutely. But don't be afraid. Angels encamp around those who love him, who fear him. He will have everyone around you ministering for you as you love and serve him and others. He goes on and says, let them exalt him. I already read that, sorry. Verse 33, he turns rivers into a desert. So he can take things away too. You may think you have it all, and he may have to strip you. See, he had to do that with me. I had, like I said, a lot of financial security. I was in a very good place financially at one time, but he had to take all that away because I was putting my faith in money. I was putting my faith in a job at one time, a career. I put my faith in addictions at one time. I always put my faith in everything but him. And it will not work if you're putting it into anything that's earthly. It says he turns flowing springs into thirsty ground and fruitful land into a salt waste. That's why Paul said in both wantingness, and then in fullness. When he's had a lot, he's had a little. He praised God in both scenarios. Always give thanks. He will provide. He will take care of you. I was reading the other day to my daughter. We always worry about having enough right now because we struggle. We do. I thank God for those he's placed in my life that have helped me. I thank the Lord for his provision because he's always providing. But we've been in situations where we were worried. And I know I shouldn't be because he fed 5,000 people, y'all, with a couple fish and a loaf of bread. So If he can do that, he can do anything. And he gave my daughter a dream, and in the dream he was telling me not to worry, that he was going to make something that even may be expensive like affordable. Like he can do that. He can. I think she had a dream, it was about a coupon, and in this dream it was like the product was an expensive product, but it was like she got it for a really cheap price, and we paid for it at the cheapest price possible. And I just knew that that was the Lord telling me, stop worrying, I'm gonna take care of you. Because I mean, the job that I've had, I just don't know that I can go back to that type of job. It drained me for go better half of 3.5, 4 years. I constantly was working, and even on my days off, I would do things like for work. It was always about my job. And being a single parent and homeschooling too, I homeschool as well, you guys, by myself. I have no one in this house helping me. It's me and my daughter. She's 11. I have no one here. I don't get days off. I don't go out for me days. I wouldn't do that if I had a babysitter. I wouldn't do that. She's never stayed with a babysitter. She's never been to a daycare. She's always with me. So even when I was working, I worked from home 90% of the time for a while. I did have to go in the office some. When I did that, she stayed with my grandmother. But 90% of the time, for the better half of 4 years, I've been home, working from home. And it is hard. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are single parents who are trying to help their kids, and I admire you and I understand your struggle. I do. And I'm telling you, just hold on. Hold on to the Lord. And I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy, guys, because it's not. It's not. But he'll be there for you. Said he turned the desert. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Verse 34 at the last part, it says, because of the wickedness of those who lived there, he turned all that fruitful land, he's saying, and all those rivers and streams, he turned it desolate because of the wickedness that was going on in that area at the time. He'll do that. He said, even the land used to vomit out its inhabitants in the Old Testament. He said, because of their immorality and a lot of sexual immorality that was going on by these other people, like the Amorites and the Hittites and all those people, he was just getting them out of the land. The land was vomiting them out, he said, because of their sin and their wickedness. Verse 35, he turned the desert into pools of water. He can take a dry as a bone desert and make water spring forth. That's what he's saying. I can take something that's dry, like the dry bones, the Ezekiel in the Valley of the Bones. He can take that dryness and he can bring life and fullness back to it, y'all. He can do it. I've seen him do it. I have seen the Lord do things in my life that were not possible any other way than a miracle. People don't believe in miracles. I do. I have seen them. I have seen them with my own eyes. Not once, not twice, but many times. And I pray that you all can witness that too. But know this, Jesus says, even those who haven't seen a thing, who don't know anything, who haven't seen anything, those who haven't seen and yet have believed are blessed, he told Thomas. He said, you believe because I let you touch my sides and you saw this or whatever. Like the people who were asking for a sign. He said, I'm not giving you one. He was the sign. He said, the only sign they'll get is a sign of Jonah. But yet people didn't realize he was the sign. He was what was raised up. Like he was talking about the snake in the wilderness, the children of Israel, when Moses had to raise the golden serpent and they had to look upon it and they were forgiven. They were, restored, healed. And he said, just like that, the Son of Man has to be raised up for that specific purpose, to die for us and to be raised again. He now sits in heaven on a throne, y'all. And he's coming back very soon. says, and the parched ground into flowing springs. He can take your parched ground, he can take your parched life and make it lush again in fullness through him. There he brought the hungry to live, and they founded a city where they could settle. They sowed fields and planted vineyards that yielded a fruitful harvest. He blessed them, and their numbers greatly increased, and he did not let their herds diminish. Then their numbers decreased, and they were humbled by oppression, calamity, and sorrow. He who pours contempt on nobles made them wander in a trackless waste. But he lifted the needy out of their affliction. Y'all, I am needy. I bet the Lord gets so tired of me, like, Lord, help me. I need you, Lord. I know he doesn't, y'all. He doesn't. He loves that. But in my mind, I used to think, I don't want to bother God with this. That's how I am with people. I don't talk to people. I know I have an issue with that. And I'm praying about I don't socialize, y'all. I don't even talk to my family on the phone. I'm very odd. I'm a weird person, and I know that. I'm very self-isolating. I talk to my daughter all the time. Me and her are like best friends, but other people, we're not very social. We're just not. I mean, Allie is, my daughter is, but I'm not. And I don't mean to be that way. But I used to feel like anytime I would talk to somebody that I was bothering them. So I sort of took on that mentality with God. I'd be like, I told my daughter, I know God is so tired of dealing with me. He's so tired. I feel like that all the time, like he's tired of me. But guys, he doesn't get tired of you. He's not like us. His mind doesn't work like us. We can't fathom his ways. They are better. They are profound, so profound that we can't comprehend it. He is not like us in that sense. He's not. He is slow to anger. His patience is, you can't even think how patient he is. He'd have to deal with somebody like me, y'all. He said he lifted the needy out of their affliction and increased their families like flocks. The upright see and rejoice, but all the wicked shut their mouths, it says. And I have told people who saw me in my old way, I have like testified about things that I've told you all in here. I've not told you guys in full things he's done, but I've told a few testimonies. And people just look at me like, okay, I get the you're crazy look or whatever, or like, okay, that's the look I get. It's sad. If somebody came up to me and said, this is what God did for me, I'd be like, wow, isn't he amazing? God is so good. People don't care. Unfortunately, today, people don't care. They don't. They are so focused on the world. This is the last verse, y'all. I have to go. Let the one who is wise heed these things. Hear that clearly. Let the one who is wise heed these things and ponder the loving deeds of the Lord. Let them ponder the loving deeds of the Lord. Isn't that beautiful? God is good. He is better than I can ever describe him to you guys. And I know some of you that watched know. I know you all have seen it. I just pray that there are people out there who've been told they're no good, that they're used goods, that they're wasted, that their life is gone, that there's not a hope. That is not true. Hear me. It is not true. It is not true. I wish that I could get people in here that could talk to me. I'm going to have to try to go back and turn my reactions on where at least you all can type and we could just talk. I might come back on a live later and do that. I don't know why they don't have a format like Zoom does where people can come in and talk, because guys, I'm really bad about emailing people and stuff. I thought I could keep up with all that stuff, but with my life being as busy as it is, I don't have time. I just don't have the time. And I feel like people think I'm rude because I don't have time. It's just like I get done, I've got to go do dishes, I cook supper, we eat, we do homework, we play, I clean house, I work some, and then it's all over and I got to do it all over again. Some days I go to bed at like 5 in the morning and get up at like 10. And it's hard to make time when you're a single person doing the job of like 2 or 3 people, you know. I'm her teacher, I'm her mother, I'm her friend, I'm her playmate, you know. I'm all these things and it's hard. I know some of y'all know, but I wouldn't change it. I love my life and I thank God for what he's done. But I know that there is a life to come that is so much greater than this. A life we can only hope to gain if we endure to the end. I'm going to go ahead and jump off. I love you guys, and I hope that I get to talk to some of you all. Like I said, I may come do a live if y'all want to just talk back and forth this way. I need to try to get back on my Zoom. If I could give some of you all the Zoom password, and maybe I think I can have up to 10 or so people. I don't pay for it anymore. I had it at the job I used to have, but that was through the company. So I don't pay for the one I have personally. So we can see, I think you can be in there with so many people for 30 minutes or something, and you can actually mic up and talk. You don't have to use your camera. You can just talk. I had thought about doing that a long time ago because I think it would be good for the fellowship. I still haven't found a church where I live that I feel comfortable at. I've seen some of their live streams, and I went to 1 or 2 in person, and I just didn't feel led to go there. So it would be really wonderful to fellowship, because most of the people that I know don't serve the Lord. And I just I don't talk to anybody. It's me and my daughter, you know. So I thank you guys. I love you all. I hope that everybody's well. And I just pray that you would cry out to God and he'll help you. I promise he will, you all. And remember what I said earlier. Knowledge is great, y'all. Hosea even said that the Lord told him, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. But Paul said there is something greater than knowledge, and that's love. True, selfless, sacrificial, charitable love. Love that knows no one better than this, a man that would lay down his life for his friends. And that's what Jesus did, guys. And he is Lord. Bye, guys. I'll talk to you soon.